podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are The Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for our match day preview. Yes, we are about to play Burnley this afternoon at Turf Moor, the first away game of the season in the Premier League, and there's lots to look forward to, so we're going to get right into it. First off, I'm joined by a slightly weary looking Johnny Hawley. Hello mate, have all these podcasts tired you out, or are you just is it just a bit early for you this one?
I'll lean on the excuse that it's all the whirlwind of happenings in the world of Sunderland that's making us look so haggard, but I think I'll actually just have to blame the early hour.
Yeah. And also with us, we've got James Copley from the Sunderland Echo once again. Hello, mate.
Hi, mate. How you doing? All right?
Yeah, this is probably quite late for you, isn't it? You're normally on like 5 a.m, typing away.
Yeah, 7 o'clock usually I start, but to be honest, I think I'm still riding away from Saturday. I'm still absolutely buzzing. It was just incredible.
I know. I've tried not to focus too much on last week, like in the last couple of days, but then I was still sat watching Match of the Day again yesterday. Can't help myself, you know. But we kind of do have to park that, don't we? I think I was reading, it was actually Scott Parker's press conference ahead of the game where he was talking to the media about this one, and he was saying like, we have to kind of ignore what happened last week now. That's out the way. We can't spend days or weeks worrying, he said, about the what ifs or what could happen now, what's in front of us or why that was so bad. I mean, both positive and negatively, Johnny, you kind of do have to try and move along. Of course, we're going to carry some momentum from the game last weekend. But this is an entirely different test, isn't it? I mean, Burnley are not going to fear us. It's their first game back at Turf Moor. You know, as Scott Parker said himself, you know, this is a very different Sunderland team, but we basically play the same way. And they're going to be looking to get their first win, so they're going to be right up for it, just like we were last week when we had the home advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a lot easier to keep things in perspective when you're on the positive side of it. So obviously, amazing result last weekend. You know, we were all there. Fantastic day. Just spectacular start to the season. Couldn't ask for more. But nobody's daft enough to think, we're already up. You know what I mean? We've already stopped up. It's already done. We're not going to lose any more games the rest of the season. That's it. You know, whereas I think when you lose and you're on the wrong side of things, it can be difficult sometimes to see where the next point's coming from or where the next goal's coming from sometimes, you know, depending on what kind of run you're on. So I think for Burnley, obviously, it's a more difficult task in the short term to kind of pick yourselves up after that opening day defeat and then try and convince yourselves like, look, we do belong here. This is our level and all the rest of it. Whereas for us, I think we've had that shot in the arm, which is great to say, yes, you can compete at this level. There you go. We've proven it. But, you know, if anybody is sat there thinking, we've done West Ham 3-0, so that's it. The rest of the Premier League is going to be a doddle. I think you might have a rude awakening or two in store over the next few months.
Yeah, like I said, James, it's different, isn't it, this one, to the game last week in many respects, because I think, you know, Burnley, if they're looking at, we need to get off to some sort of start, a home game against a fellow promoted team is probably the best chance you're going to get of that happening. And I know we know a lot more about ourselves than perhaps they do, but from a purely sort of Burnley perspective, they're going to be looking at this game and thinking, we can win this. And we've got to be careful we don't get too carried away about what happened last week. We've got to go into this with a totally different mindset, I think.
It feels big, doesn't it, Gav? I was talking to Matt Scrafton, who's the Burnley writer for the Burnley Express, same company as the Sunderland Echo. And we were saying that, you know, every game feels big in the Premier League, doesn't it? Because it's covered so heavily. All of the pundits talk about it. You're on Match of the Day. You're on Sky Sports. You know, it's very strange for us at the moment because we've got Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher saying nice things about us. And to be part of this sort of new Premier League culture that we haven't been in for so long is nice, but a little bit weird at the same time. But this does genuinely feel like a big game, despite all of the outside noise. I mean, Sunderland have got off to a good start, 3 points, but Burnley need to bounce back, don't they? And you could just see Scott Parker coming under a little bit of pressure if they don't get a result of some sort against Sunderland at Turf Moor. It's vital, really, that they sort of kickstart their season. Their transfer business hasn't been perhaps as eye-catching as us, and they've sort of gone under the radar a little bit. By all accounts, when they played Tottenham, did actually give them a decent game, but they were just undone by some clinical finishing. I do think it's interesting that Burnley played a 5 at the back against Tottenham away from home.
Is that not to accommodate Kyle Walker? I'm sure I read something about that.
I believe it is, because I think he played obviously right side of the 3, didn't he?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Obviously, West Ham played with a back 5 against Sunderland, didn't they? And it posed a couple of threats, I think, early on in the first half, but Sunderland managed to get to grips with that, overpowered them in midfield, I would argue, and hit them on the break. Can they do that to Burnley? I think they're certainly capable, but it's an interesting game, isn't it? Because you would imagine that Burnley, the onus would be on them in front of their fans to maybe get at Sunderland and attack them, and I think that would suit Sunderland, given everything we know about Régis Le Bris's playing style. It's a fascinating game to me because I think both sides will think that they owe each other one. If you cast your minds back to the opening, the first game last season against Burnley, where we sat in and we hit them on the break, rode our luck a little bit at times, but we're very good defensively. And then the game away from home, I think we'll feel like we owe them one because of the drama in the Wilson Isidore penalties against James Trafford. So I think there's, not to over-egg it too early on in the season because nothing's won or lost in August, but it does feel like a really big and important game, which, to be fair, they all are in the Premier League.
Yeah, I'm looking at their team really, and you mentioned the transfer business, and it's not been terrible, but I think some of the best business they've done is probably retaining some of the players that they have. I mean, Estev's a fantastic player, really rate him. And the fact he's still here, I mean, there's still time to go, you can still lose 1 or 2. But, he's still there. Kyle Walker, I think, is probably got a lot to prove in these first couple of months because a lot of people have written him off and said he's finished. He'll want to show that he's not. Dubravka's not a terrible signing. I think, Trafford was their best player last season, probably. And he's gone, and we know all about James Trafford from that game at Turf Moor where he saved 2 penalties. And then you look to some of the other players that they've got. I think when I had the Burnley and Leeds fans on the pod the other week, the Burnley fan refused to pronounce his name, so I'm going to try it. Leslie Ogochukwu, I think it is, who signed from, I might be wrong, has signed from Chelsea, but he's going to be hoping to start this one. And Marcus Edwards, of course, is a player who they signed last season. I think we were even in for him by all accounts. So, he's probably going to be pushing for starting this one. So they're gonna be probably fielding a little bit more of an attacking team, Johnny, and I think that might suit us. We saw that last season when we play against teams away from home who come on to us. We've got the players on the break to hurt them, and we've talked a lot in recent weeks about the shape up of the team and the way that we've kind of built this side, and it almost feels like it's the perfect setup for those kind of games. Almost, you look at the defense; it's very solid, it's very resolute. The midfield in front will run and run and run. But we've also got midfield players who like to play forward. And then we've got attackers who we've got pace to burn. So I'm kind of hoping that Burnley do come at us. I was just looking at the stats from the game against Tottenham. And as James says, it wasn't completely one-sided. If you look at it, they had 14 shots, 4 on target. Yeah, Tottenham dominated the possession, but they did still have chances. They did try and use their pace on the counter-attack. So it could be quite an interesting matchup, this one. I think we've got to be guarded against just going there and thinking, right, well, this is an easy 3 points. I don't think it will be. I think if you're going into this and thinking Sunderland are just going to turn up and win, we've got to try and reflect back on them games last season. They were a difficult opponent, Burnley, and they didn't concede many goals. I'm kind of just hoping that the quality we've brought in will tell in this one. And, despite the fact Burnley are a decent enough team, that we've just got too much for them.
Yeah, and this is the sort of game, I think, where you've got to be, from the outset, you've got to be okay with taking a point. Because if we approach this game where we think that we absolutely need to win it, which, don't get us wrong, a win would be massive. These are the absolute classic 6-pointers. I know
we've got a Champions League pace to hold down, Johnny. We've got to try and keep it.
Yeah, exactly. Every point's worth gold dust when you're in a title race with Liverpool, Man City and Arsenal. But yeah, no, as James says, you don't win or lose anything in August, but this is still a huge game because we know that Burnley are going to be, a key player in whatever our season's going to look like. Burnley are going to be heavily involved in one way or another, hopefully positively for us. But if we go there and we're happy enough to take a point if it comes to it, then I think we can play the game to our advantage. Like you say, we've looked really solid defensively on the first day. And under Le Bris in general, we've never overcommitted or gone gung-ho or, left ourselves open unless we've really needed to when properly chasing the game in the last few minutes or whatever. And even that's very few and far between. So if we play with that same sort of organisation and solidity at the back, then I think we can, obviously give ourselves a good platform to win the game. And then, like you say, from that point, it depends a lot on what Burnley do, because if they are going to try and bring take the game to us, play some proper football and try and get it down and knock it about a bit, then I think it plays into our hands quite a lot. But obviously, like you say, they have still got some quality in the team, and they got 100 points last season, so they know how to play football. And a 3-0 result on the opening day against Spurs that's not going to be the yardstick of this Burnley team, in much the same way that the 3-0 against West Ham probably isn't going to be the yardstick of our team. That's still yet to be determined over the next, 4 to 6 weeks, probably, when you start to see teams settling into their actual style of play and how they're going to look. So we've got to be prepared for a surprise or two, I think. You can't write them off, as you say, Gav, anyway, but you certainly also can't write off the possibility that they do something that we're not expecting so early in the season. But yeah, I think if we go there and keep things pretty tight and play our way into the game, then we've got the pace on the break to hurt them. I think we all know that, especially when you see, we were pacey last season and now we've added Shemsdin Talby and we've got Simon Adingra and, some of these players who we've already seen make an impact in a Sunderland shirt. So all of the ingredients are there for us to win the game. It's all just about playing the situation properly and making sure that we, time our forays into the opposition final third properly and don't leave ourselves high and dry. But I trust Le Bris to do that. I think, he's shown that he's got that in his locker.
Yeah, Johnny said there about going and being fairly happy with taking a point. Do you think that'll be the mentality, James, that we'll go there happy to take a point? And we always go to win a game, of course. But how do you see us approaching this one in terms of mentality?
I think that's an interesting question. I think internally within this squad, they'll obviously be targeting 3 points. I think you've got to use the old Sam Allardyce adage, haven't you? You've always got to respect the point if one comes your way away from home in the Premier League. That will be a decent result, there's no doubt about that. But the context matters as well, doesn't it? If Sunderland get a point against Burnley and they've had 16 shots to Burnley's 2 and Burnley have equalised in the 94th minute, then that clouds the narrative a little bit, doesn't it?
The game last season, we come away with a point and we felt like we got beat.
Exactly. And, on paper, if you didn't know the context behind that game, it looks a great point given that Burnley went and got 100 points. But I think internally they'll be going to winning the game. I really, really loved Le Bris's press conference yesterday, just because he just never changes, does he? He's just all about the challenge in front of him. He's not worrying too far ahead. He's concentrating on Burnley. I think his mentality and the mentality in that leadership group now, particularly with Xhaka and Ronaldo, they won't let them get too carried away. I mean, a lot of people have pointed out that when Sunderland went 2-0 up against West Ham, everybody's delirious and celebrating, and a lot of the young players are over the moon, obviously, and Xhaka's marshalling everybody. He's getting everybody back into position because he knows that even with the time left on the clock late in the game, he knows that things can happen in the Premier League. When that 7 minutes went up and just before the third goal and we had those 2 corners against us, I was sat there thinking, God, if they get one here, then there's a real chance that they could draw the game. That's just how football in the Premier League works, isn't it? But I think in terms of their mentality, a point would be a good result, but I reckon they'll be hoping to go there and really give Burnley a good game and build on the momentum, definitely.
Yeah, I think so. I just think the approach will be very, very different. And I'm expecting us to... I say that, no, tell you what, I don't expect the approach to be completely different, because actually, if you think about it, we didn't keep a lot of the ball against West Ham. I think we made our quality tell, and similarly, Tottenham did that by looking at the result last week against Burnley. They made their quality tell. You see some of the goals they scored. Richarlison scoring 2 absolute rakers, for instance. I think that's the difference in the Premier League between the Championship, or a big difference, is that to get results in the Premier League, you need them moments. We had them moments against West Ham, Tottenham had their moments against Burnley where you might only get 4-5 chances in a game, if that. You might only get 3, and you need to take 2 of them, because if you don't take 2 of them, you're not getting a result. So I wouldn't, I'm kind of thinking maybe the approach will be very similar, actually, in terms of the way we approach the game, because I was looking at Burnley's sort of makeup of that team, and last season they weren't wowing teams. They were quite. I actually remember getting to about October, November time, looking at Burnley and going, "How on earth are they picking up results?" They weren't, because they were awful to watch.
Yeah, they were.
Sometimes that's the most. I'm not saying like Sunderland weren't great to watch at times last season. You know what I mean? But it could be a bit of a styles clash. I don't know. I'm kind of expecting them to be in the home team. I've just seen as well they've sold out, and that's there's expectation there, isn't there? They're going to turn up at the ground. The fans are going to be really behind them, and they're going to want to give their all for their fans. And you do see teams raise their game when they've got a full crowd behind them. And from Sunderland's perspective, that probably means we've just got to do what we've done quite often with this group of players and without this group of players last season, and maybe just sit in a bit and just be quite happy to concede possession and let them have the ball, because we trust in our structures, we trust in our ability to defend really well, we trust in our ability to win the second balls when it's going long over the top and things like that. But the thing that's interesting me is whether or not Burnley actually play a back 5 or not. Because as I said at the front of this pod, there's almost a realisation here that Kyle Walker probably has to play in a back 3 because he hasn't quite got the legs to play right back, but he can probably still play right back. He's going to be up against Simon Adingra, who's quick, coming inside on that left foot. It's not like he's going to be taking him on down the outside and skipping around Kyle Walker. So that sort of know-how and that experience will probably come in quite handy against Adingra. So I'm wondering whether they might go with a back 4. They might maybe put another attacker in there, and they might go for it a little bit more. But we can't worry too much about that. Sunderland can only really worry about the way we set up. And when you look at the potential for what we could select in this game, it's not going to be a million miles off that West Ham game. I mean, I'm guessing you're both in agreement with me that Alderete will come in at the back for Sealt. I know it was great to hear, by the way, that Jensen Sealt's fine, because I did really, given his injury record and then sort of the way he went down, he just didn't look comfortable at all, and you're thinking the worst, aren't you? You're thinking, oh God, what's wrong with him? But I think we all kind of accept that Alderete is the first choice there, and, we saw his quality when he came on in that game. He's got to start this alongside Dan Ballard. But I'm looking at the rest of the team and I'm wondering, is there a place for Enzo Lefebvre in this side on Saturday? Is there a place? Because at Turf Moor last year, Enzo Lefebvre was fantastic. I know it's a totally different game, totally different set of circumstances, but he had a brilliant game down there last year. And then if that's the case, you're looking at the team going, but where would he fit in? It's tough, isn't it, Johnny? Like, you almost, I heard Chris say this on the pod that he did with you and Martin earlier in the week, where he was saying you've got to try and find a way to get him in somehow, but it's just tough, isn't it? Like, where would Enzo Lefebvre fit in this game against Burnley?
For me, he would fit in the middle if he was going to play. I don't see this being a game where I'd want him to play out wide. And now I know, obviously, we saw times last season through necessity, and when he came on against West Ham, that he can play out on the left. We've seen that bear fruit sometimes as well. At Middlesbrough away last season in particular, where he gave Luke Ayling a torrid time down that left flank. But I just think in a game against a team who either are going to play a back 3 or potentially a back 4 with Kyle Walker at right back, who still, he's not a cart horse or anything, but he's not in his prime anymore, is he? I think you've got to have out-and-out pace on your wings. And as well, because I think Burnley are the kind of team who, as much as we keep saying we're well organised and defensively solid, this is I know they've lost the keeper in that, but this is still the same team by and large, and the same manager who conceded 15 goals in the Championship in all of last season, which, they're also no mugs defensively. They're not going to be leaving massive wide open space for us to just, gallop into on the break. You're not going to see a Wilson Isidore against Hull last season, where he runs the length of the pitch and just dinks the keeper. It's not going to be that easy. So I'd want to see as much pace as possible in that front 3. So I'd like to see that unchanged. Whereas I think in the midfield, there is room for a change if we wanted to make it. It's just obviously it's difficult to drop one of Diarra or Siddiqui, and it's not going to be Xhaka who gets dropped, is it?
No.
Because he's the captain. On performance, you can't drop Diarra and Siddiqui, but on tactics, you could make an argument possibly for swapping one out for Lefebvre, because I think in a game away from home, holding on to the ball is at even more of a premium than it usually is. Because obviously, you're going to be, if not under the pump, you're certainly going to be under a bit more pressure early on. And I think it's a good point that you made as well, Gav, actually. I think it's easy to forget this is Burnley's first home game back. So, we had ours last weekend, and that was all the pomp and circumstance for us around, the home coming after 8 years and all the rest of it. And Leeds had their equivalent on the Monday night against Everton. This is Burnley's first one. Their first game was away, so they're going to have that, that release of the joy and the relief of the fans of being back. Obviously, slightly muted because they've come off the back of a 3-0 defeat, but they're going to have an atmosphere that they're going to try and harness and use against us. And I think actually that could be where we're at a little bit of a leg up, because our players played last week in an absolute cauldron of noise. The sheer volume alone during Wise Men Say and during the Mayenda song after the goal and, the celebrations at full time and Mayenda, being an orchestra conductor with the crowd, as he always does. We've kind of been there now, done that, felt the adrenaline high and felt the crash. So I think going into this game, hopefully our players, and Granit Xhaka is going to have to lead this, are going to have the mentality to be able to go in and let that kind of just, wash over their heads and not get too involved in all that side of the game and just play the match and not the occasion, because it's going to be a bit of an occasion for Burnley. So, yeah, I think we have got to be careful, because they're going to have things that can hurt us and they're going to have ways of stopping us. But if we had Lefebvre in that team, to circle back in a really long-winded way to the original point, I think Lefebvre gives us a little bit more opportunity to control the ball when we do get it back. He's not that I think Siddiqui's not good on the ball, but I think Lefebvre's he's got more vision. He can spot things more quickly and can spot more dangerous opportunities, I think, with the ball, which is something that we're going to have to be really, really efficient with. Again, to touch back on what you said before, at this level, sometimes you only get 2 or 3 chances. That might be chances in front of goal, but sometimes you only get 2 or 3 chances to put a ball into goal, in front of goal for somebody. So you've got to get your chance creation right as well. And so I think from front to back, we need to have everybody as on it as possible. And that's why I think you can make a case for Lefebvre coming in and playing. But having said that, I would suspect Le Bris is not going to change in midfield, because they were phenomenal against West Ham.
Yeah, that's my feeling too, James. I don't know about you, but as much as I'd like to see Enzo Lefebvre on the pitch, you couldn't drop any of their midfielders from last week. They were fantastic. And there's also, as well, we play again on Tuesday in the Cup, so he's going to get 90 minutes there. What would you do if it was you? What would you do with that team?
No, I love Enzo Lefebvre, but I don't think you can drop any of that midfield 3. I hear what Johnny's saying, absolutely. I think I would argue, though, that Siddiqui, in terms of his energy and his work rate, could actually prove vital. Habib Diarra is an interesting one, because obviously he's cost like 30 million quid and he's got bags of talent. But from the limited time I've seen him play, he gets the ball, he looks up and he passes forward, doesn't he? Which is absolutely great. Or he makes a long bust and run forward with the ball, which is fantastic. I think we're all going to love that. But away from home is that what you really need? You do need a little bit of ball retention. That said, I personally, if I was the manager, I wouldn't drop the 3 of them just because of the cohesion. And I think we've all raved about that midfield 3 against West Ham in terms of they all do something that the other midfielders don't, if that makes sense. Xhaka's got the vision, he's got the organisational skills. Siddiqui's got the energy and the work rate. Habib Diarra's got the forward thinking, passing, can run with the ball. So yeah, for me, I wouldn't change it. I think Enzo will come on early, probably as the first substitution, and I think probably on the left for a Dingra if things aren't sort of happening in an attacking sense. And I think actually as well, we've seen Enzo can play on the left and he can do it very effectively. Obviously, Johnny mentioned the Burnley game he played on the left that day. The Middlesbrough away game stands out as a bit of a masterclass, doesn't it? I think tactically, when you bring a midfielder on and play him left wing, it does give you a little bit more control over the game. And I think you can add that ball retention later on. But it all depends on what happens, really, doesn't it? And where Sunderland are around the 60-minute mark. But for me, I wouldn't drop anybody from that midfield, judging on the West Ham performance. I think while you can argue for it tactically, I don't think it would send out the right message by Le Bris at this early stage of the season. I think you need to sort of stick with them. And history tells us as well, he's not really a massive tinker man, is he? Really, he doesn't like to make wholesale changes. I mean, the Alderete one's pretty obvious, given that Silt had that little bit of a knock, and obviously Alderete's sort of a lot further ahead in his career than Silt. So that's the only one I can really see happening. Obviously, Masuaku might be on the bench, and then the lad from PSG might be in contention, but Le Bris hinted that that's more likely to be Tuesday against Huddersfield. How are we pronouncing the PSG lad's name?
Mukiele,
is that it? Is that
yeah.
it? Right.
That's one of the ones that he's actually checked and he does know how to pronounce.
Yeah. There's a
YouTube video telling you how to say it. That's the only reason I know.
It's funny actually, because we're all logged into the Sunderland Echo's YouTube channel, and I'll sometimes log on there in the morning, and Phil will have been looking at how to pronounce, like, Masuaku and stuff like that. So I do piggyback off that sometimes, but I just haven't had a chance.
I did this the other day. I mean, not to look too far ahead, but against Huddersfield, this is the team we could potentially play. So when you're thinking about, like, who you could put in, whether they need 90 minutes, all these sort of things for the Burnley game, I've got Patterson, Masuaku, Silt, Mukiele, Huggins, Lefay, Rigg, Neil, Roberts, Dew, Isidore. That's a starting 11 of players who will probably not start this game today. That is
team, that.
I mean, better than that, really. I mean, you're looking at it and you're going, Enzo Lefay, Mukiele, Masuaku, all that Premier League experience, Isidore and Dew up front. So we've got a lot of options. I mean, we can only pick a bench of 9 for this game against Burnley,
I would love to see Ogunsui on that bench for the game against Huddersfield as well. I really would.
Yeah, we had a piece on the website on Friday. The reader wrote into us saying that he'd love to see him given a chance. I think, he'll probably go out on loan somewhere, but he's definitely earned the right to be in the conversation, hasn't he? But, when you look at just that as a list of names, and I've missed people out there, by the way. Alan Brown wasn't on there for, Ahmed Abdullahi wasn't on there. There's probably one or two of us that's escaped me mind. Neca Triantis, who looks like he's actually leaving. But, that's a lot of players. So it's just, we're in the initial phase of the season now. We've got to try and get some sort of consistency. If you're winning games, we've won a game, we scored 3 goals, and we've kept a clean sheet, it's very difficult to change that immediately. We might get a point against Burnley, and then after this, you look at it and you go, actually, maybe it's time to give Dew a start. Maybe it's time to give Isidore a start. When we play Brentford, you might be looking at it and going, actually, we could do Enzo Lefay coming in on that left-hand side, something a little bit different to a Dingra. These are conversations we might have in a week or so. I think right now, it's important we don't change too much after such a good result. And I know you can't, again, I've said this repeatedly, you can't get caught up too much in that win over West Ham. But in terms of team selection, I think if you think of the message it would send to Siddiqui or Diarra, for instance, if you drop one of them and bring in Lefay, it sends the wrong message, because they couldn't have done more, really. So unless they're struggling with a knock, or we've spotted some glaring tactical hole in the Burnley master plan that requires Enzo Lefay to come in ahead of them, I just don't see that happening. I think the narrative which Le Bris has built up around the squad, and it being a squad game rather than it being about a starting 11, is quite good. And it's good that it seems he's got the full team to buy into it, because he talked about them. It was the friendly doubleheader the weekend before the season started, when he talked about them as, he didn't call them reserves or subs or whatever, he called them finishers. And in the game against West Ham, Lefay and Isidore came on and both had an impact. I thought Lefay was brilliant. He went out on the left-hand side, he grafted like mad, but then he showed quality too, and then Isidore obviously scored a goal. So we need that to be the mentality, I think. And yeah, they're going to be disappointed that they're not starting games, but I also think that if everyone's bought into what we're trying to do here, they'll be able, none of them are thick, and it doesn't feel like we've got egos in the squad. So there's no way that Chris Rigg or Dan Neil or Patrick Roberts could possibly look at that game last week and go, why is he starting ahead of me? It's more like, I've got to work hard in training every day, hope he has a stinker, or hope he gets a knock, and then it'll be my chance to come in and prove why I should be staying in the team. And I think that's the most healthy scenario for all of this. So I don't actually see any changes bar that forced one for Alderete. You could maybe make a case for bringing in Isidore ahead of Mayenda. I love Mayenda. But Isidore did score the other day, and he's going to want to right some wrongs, isn't he, after that game last year?
We spoke to Wilson after the game against West Ham, and you mentioned about that mentality and the feeling within the group, and he was brilliant. He's a brilliant interview anyway, but as a journalist, you're looking for angles. You're not looking to stir stuff, obviously, but you're looking to get thoughts and you're looking to get the best line. And one of the national journalists asked him, first game in the Premier League, your 15 goal contributions last season, are you a bit gutted not to be playing? And he went, oh, well, yeah, of course, I'm frustrated with it, but I trust the head coach. I absolutely love Elijah Mayenda. He's like a little brother to me. I'm delighted that he's scored, and I'm delighted to come on, and I'll keep pushing. And I just thought it's pretty sound, really, isn't it? Like, as a mentality from a striker who arguably deserves to be played. I mean, some of his finishes last season were absolutely brilliant, but I thought that was a really good glimpse into a healthy dressing room.
It's something Le Bris cultivated really, really well last season, didn't he? And I think back to that first, however long it was, that sort of first 12 games or so where I think we sort of won 9, drew 1 or 2, lost 1 or 2 or whatever. We were top of the league for a while. That team was much like what you were sort of saying before. It was unchanged bar injuries every week. You could pick Le Bris's exact 11 every single week. It was Adji Elise got injured, obviously, after the first 3 or 4 games, so he got replaced. But apart from that, it was a very consistent 11. And even in game, that sort of first 10, 12 games, we were making fewer substitutions and later substitutions. And that was, it was a bone of contention for a lot of people, myself included at the time. And I wrote about it on the site, that I thought that he was underutilising a lot of his squad, and it would come back to bite him in terms of players both not being sharp enough and not being kept happy because they're not getting on the pitch. But obviously, in the fullness of time, Le Bris was spot on, and he kind of, that consistent selection, I think, like you said just there, Gav, it cultivates the right attitude in the sense that, if I put the work in and play well, I'm going to be rewarded by being in the team. So you've got the incentive to keep going and keep pushing when you've got the shirt. But then as the season wore on, we did start seeing more rotation. We did start seeing the bench getting used more. And everybody did feel involved, because then you just think about the playoff final, and what changed the game in the second half was substitutions. Patrick Roberts comes on and was brilliant. Enzo Lafayette changes position and is brilliant. And those kind of things, learning that last season, I think, is going to be huge for Le Bris this season. And even in the West Ham game, the substitutions were brilliant. We didn't need to change the game per se, but they absolutely kept control. Isidore comes on and gets a goal, which obviously you bring a striker on and they score. That's as well as it can go. So I think, that attitude and that ethos, I think, is probably going to continue. So he is more than likely going to pick consistent 11s, isn't he, where the results are permitting it. But I think, it's an extension of what he was learning in that process from last season, continuing into this. And I think that should give us all a lot of confidence in his ability to keep such a big squad happy. Because as you listed the players that could play in the cup game, again, very similar to last season, that Preston game early on in the League Cup, he just chucked out the entire rotation 11. And I would expect it to be similar this season again. So yeah, I think, Le Bris isn't going to change his spots too much, is he, from season to season? So I think you can read a fair amount into that.
Yeah. Like I say, we've got a game a couple of days later where all these players are going to get opportunities. So I'm just thinking, he's probably going to stick with that team plus Alderete coming in for Sealt from last week. And honestly, I think it's strange, because we've almost, and I kind of touched on this before, but we've almost built a team now that is perfect for playing at home in the Premier League, because you're going to have teams turning up and coming on to us. And it's perfect for going away, because you can play the exact same way away from home. Everyone who's a home team is going to be wanting 3 points against Sunderland. They're going to come on to us. And I just think when you've got so much aggression and, just that physical presence on the pitch that we've got now is going to set us up nicely. Even if it's a slog of a game, if Burnley's a slog of a game this afternoon, it won't really matter because we've got big bruisers all over the pitch who are going to work hard for you. And then I look at the alternative 11, which I've put together for the Huddersfield game, and it's sorely lacking in that midfield in physical presence. And it's that would be the big difference for me, is if we started having to bring in some of those other players, all of a sudden the physical intensity drops off. So at least in the initial month or so, I would just like to see as much of that midfield three as possible, as much of the front three with the pace of Talby and Adingra and Mayenda and possibly Isidore coming in here and there. I'm keen for those partnerships to build up, and we've given ourselves a great platform. So, I know we'd all be happy with a point against Burnley, but what we're saying realistically, Johnny, are we thinking, I think if you look at the games that we've got coming up, we've got to, in this first 6 or 7 games, we've got to pick up. And I know this is like being stating the obvious, but we've got to pick up as many points as we can. And look at it. If we all gave our sort of predictions for what we think the table's going to be at the end of the season, I think 99 out of 100 Sunderland fans will have Burnley going down. So we should be going there, and I think trying to get 3 points. I mean, we always go out to try and get 3 points. But I would, depending on the flow of the game, that might change. But I would probably be a little bit disappointed if we don't, given how well we've started. I think we've got to win this one, if I'm honest, like, to keep the momentum going. And I wouldn't be completely gutted with a point, but yeah, my gut feeling is we should be going here and winning this game.
I agree. And I think the point about keeping the momentum going is huge, because not just our sort of general early season fixtures are more favourable than they could be, certainly more favourable than you look at Leeds as a direct comparison. They've got some real tough games in the first 5 especially. Our first 3, obviously West Ham, we've got out the way with a 3-0 win, then Burnley away, then Brentford at home. And Brentford look like they very well could be a team that's, involved in the thick of the relegation battle, potentially right till the end of the season. So they may be a direct rival for us. If we can win this game and then take the momentum of 2 wins in a row into that game, then all of a sudden things start to open up for us, and possibilities are looking, very positive. But that is looking 2 games ahead, and Le Bris would be slapping us around the chops right now and saying, whoa, no, think about the first game and nothing else. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think it would be huge psychologically if we could win this game, both for us, for that momentum, and also, as I was saying before, Burnley's first home game of the season. And like you said, against Sunderland at home, everyone in the league is going to be targeting 3 points. So the double whammy of us getting the win and denying them the points, I think that could be massive. So we have to be going in to win. The only thing I want is, if it gets to the last 10, 15 minutes and it's 0-0 or 1-1 or whatever, I just don't want to see us going crazy and chucking 4, 5, 6, 7 people forward every time we've got the ball, because I don't want us to panic and lose our heads. I don't want us to lose the point in the search of the 3, but I do think we should be looking to win the game, and I will be disappointed if we don't, because I think, and this could bite us later, but I think we're a better team than Burnley, so I would want us to win the game.
I'll just remind you, sorry, Gav, very quickly, of Sunderland's festive fixtures as well. So Liverpool, this is in December. Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle, Brighton, Leeds, Man City, and then you've got Tottenham on the 3rd of January. So you could argue, really, I know you've sort of touched upon it there, that this early part of the season could be really important in terms of points on the board and a bit of momentum. To Johnny's point as well, I've seen and heard Sunderland compared to an oil tanker, and it's really hard to get it turned around, but once you get it going in the right direction, it's actually really hard to stop. So if we're 1-2 from 2, and then you go into the Brentford game and you get a result there as well, all of a sudden, this place is going to feel like it's taken off. It already feels brilliant, the buzz around the city at the moment. Premier League football's coincided with a lot of investment and a lot of work around the local area, and murals going up and things are getting built, and the city's changing before our eyes, isn't it? And it feels like the city's got its confidence back again. To a wider point, if the football can reflect that and mirror that over these next couple of games, I think it could be really powerful going in to a grim-looking festive period. And on that festive period as well, we'll lose games that we think we should win, and we'll probably win games that we think we should lose, because that always happens over Christmas. But it is a really, really tough month, that, and the games will come thick and fast. It'll be every 3 days. It'll be a bit of a head spinner, won't it, for the players as well. So I think that is a key point, that getting points early on could well define our season.
Yeah. So, Johnny, now we've said that, score prediction?
I went 2-1 last time, and I was wrong, but we won. So I'm going to go 2-1 this time. And if I'm wrong, but we win, I'm happy. But I do think we'll win. So yeah, I'm going to say 2-1 to Sunderland.
Yeah. What about you, James? Are you thinking along the same lines as me that we probably have to go and get 3 points in this one? But what's your prediction as well?
So I predicted would beat West Ham 1-0. I didn't see the 3-0 coming, so I'm going to go with 1-0 against Burnley. Victory for Sunderland. I think we've just got enough where we'll sit in, hit them on a break, and I back our defence as well. I think with Alderweireld coming in, I think we're going to be really, really solid. Reinildo at left back as well. All of this experience, Jacques and Marshland. I back us to get a result. I think we should obviously go there with the mentality of wanting to win. I wouldn't be too disappointed with a point, but I think we'll win. I think we'll win 1-0.
I'm going 2-0. I think we're just going to have a little bit too much for them. I don't think we'll dominate the game. I don't think we're going to come away and go, we absolutely blew Burnley away. I think they're going to have a lot of the ball. But I just think we've tweaked certain things with this squad composition. We've added aggression. We've added height. So all of a sudden we're a bigger threat on set pieces. We saw that last week when we scored 2 headed goals that we're more effective in the box now because of the aerial ability we've got and the quality we've got to get the good crosses into the box too. And I agree with you. I back the defence. I think we've got a very, very solid defence and the goalkeeper looks good. And I'm just hoping, a bit like last season when we played Burnley, it's a bit too early in the season for them to have got motoring. Well, if you remember, it was a bit different last season, but they were going through a massive transition in their squad. They were losing a lot of players. The squad wasn't settled and they started quite slowly, Burnley. And it wasn't until later in the season they picked up a bit. And I'm just wondering if that'll be the case again, having lost CJ Egan Riley, having lost James Trafford, who were massive to that.
Brownhill as well.
Brownhill, yeah. Well, you think about how solid they were last season. They were 3 of the big players. I know that they've kept a Stev, but look, it's very, very different to what got them to this point. And I just think it might be a little bit too early in the season for Burnley to really show anything. And we look really settled, despite the amount of change we've made. You wouldn't know it. We look like we've been playing together for months. So no, I'm really, really happy with the way we're kind of leading into this game. And yeah, I'm thinking a 2-0 win to Sunderland. But I've been wrong before.
I would love Wilson Isidore to be decisive on the day. I would really, really, really love that. It would be class. But that's probably asking for a bit too much. Just win the game first, please.
I think mentally though, for him, that would be like kind of drawing a line under it, wouldn't it? Because he's he seems quite a mentally strong person anyways, but I just think that'll be this week, especially because the last time he was there, it was a big test for him mentally, having lost lost out and scoring twice. And you could see the knock on in his performances after that. He didn't play very well for a while. So yeah. I think it would be good for him if he can come on and do so, and he'll be really keen. Like, that's the good thing with players who are mentally strong, like Wilson. He's had enough time to think about it. He'll be absolutely desperate to do well for himself and do well for Sunderland. So
another good talking point, Gav. But who's Sunderland's mystery penalty taker? Because Le Bris was quite coy. I reckon it's Trey Hume.
I don't know. Do you not think? I don't know if people are reading too much into what he said. He just said it's a surprise and he doesn't want to give it away, as opposed to.
I read it. as it's going to be a surprise, but you could read it either way. Absolutely.
I don't know whether that was just.
It's going to be Roofs. Roofs just strides up and blasts one in the roof of the net.
It's been a while since
I'm hoping for
and free kicks, isn't it? It was that Paraguayan that used to do it. Chilavert.
Yeah. I'm hoping for like a Reinildo, Stuart Pearce sort of regen situation where he just starts lashing them in with his left foot, because I absolutely love that man. I think he's class.
Well, I think I haven't seen some shocking penalty shootouts in the last couple of months. I think it's about time we just went back to the old days of twatting it one and trying to put a hole in the net. I'd be quite happy if we get. I think, to be honest, that's another thing, isn't it? Sunderland's penalty record in the last 18 months has been terrible. So yeah, hopefully whoever it is can actually just put their foot through it and get back.
That 94th minute penalty, Wilson Isidore's on the pitch to win it. Does he take it?
As long as we've sorted it out before next season's Champions League final, we'll be all right.
Aye, that's it. We've got to keep up this charge for the league title, so let's concentrate on that first.
You don't want to see another situation where they were sort of like arguing a little bit about it like they were last season. Was that before 09 took it? That was a big grim. I've forgotten about that, actually.
Yeah, well, maybe we've learned from that. But yeah, let's keep the momentum going. Let's make sure we get another 3 points. Let's just keep motoring, as you said. Sunderland seem to be pointing in the right direction. And the other side of it, which we've completely ignored, by the way, is if we do lose, let's keep our heads. Because we keep preaching that on here. It's a case of we probably are going to lose some games where we think we should win. We're probably going to win some where we don't deserve it. The most important thing is that we keep our heads. I don't want to see people completely losing their shit if we don't beat Burnley just because they've built themselves up that much into thinking we're going to go there and win. Burnley are going to be up for it. They're going to have to win some games early towards too. It might be against us. We'll get over it if that's the case very quickly. And I hope people just keep that in mind because, it's going to be a long season. There's still, after this one, there's still 36 league games to go and we can't get too carried away either way, can we? I know it's hard when you win 3-0 on the opening day in such a manner. It's hard not to get carried away, but we've been here enough times. We've all seen an awful lot of Premier League football over the years. We know how tough it is, and it's got tougher since the last time we were there. So let's stay grounded either way, I think is the key message to come out of this one. But if we do win and we go back to the top of the league, then just, also get carried away.
Let's get carried away, man. Let's get carried away.
That's it. And in the words of Davey, who was on Total Sport a few months back, wasn't he saying that? Yeah. Thank you very much, gents. It's been great. Cheers, Johnny.
Yeah, cheers. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. And cheers, James. If people want to catch your coverage of the game, where can they grab all of that?
Yeah, all at the Sunderland Echo. Phil and Jason Jones are down there, but I'm staying at home because my partner is getting close to her due date, so I don't think I would be able to justify a trip down there. Yeah,
unless Kirill lends you his helicopter or whatever.
No, I don't see that happening.
Cheers, mate. Thank you to the listeners. As always, we'll be back with a reaction pod straight after the game. That's going to be you, Johnny, isn't it, with Bomber, I think?
Correct, yeah. Hopefully it's better than the last reaction pod me and Bomber did after a match.
Yeah, what was that, Hearts in pre-season? Yeah.
Trying to chew over a 3-0 friendly loss.
I mean, you got 25 minutes out of it, so you must have, if you can do that with a hammering in pre-season, I'm sure you'll be all right if we lose.
I listened to that back on the train from Hearts, actually, and it was just like summed up how I felt. What am I doing here? Like we've just lost 3-0 to Hearts, and I've got to find something to say about it.
Yeah, you're a hardy soul sticking that in your ears after that game.
Yeah,
glutton for punishment.
Yes, well, like I say, we'll be back after the game, and then on Sunday morning we are joined by Nick Barnes. Me and Martin will be talking to him. Our Sunday supplement, as we've stolen from Sky, have brought that back, haven't we? So we might have to change the name. But anyways, as of right now, it's Sunday supplement. We'll be joined by Nick Barnes on Sunday morning, so that one should be out sort of mid-morning for you. And then on Monday, we've got On This Week, another edition of On This Week, in which I'm told it was an epic talking about the great Bobby Kerr. So if you want to tune in for that one, make sure you get subscribed to How Are the Podcast. New podcasts every single day here on the feeds, free of charge, doesn't cost you a penny. And we are going to be ramping up towards all of the games as the week follows on. We've got Huddersfield too, so there'll be all the preview and reaction to that. So loads to get your teeth stuck into if you're not already subscribed to us. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.